Hey everyone, AI seems to be everywhere, right? I mean, not like robots taking over, but like in our social media feeds and even in healthcare. It's pretty wild. Today, let's take a deep dive into this research from Nature Human Behavior. It's all about AI bias and how it can create these feedback loops with us, humans. And it's not always a good thing.
Yeah, you're right. We don't think about it much, but even a little bit of AI bias can really change what choices people make. And this isn't some future problem either. It's happening now with things like those AI image generators and emotion recognition stuff.
Okay, so how did this research start? Like, what was the beginning?
So researchers did this experiment where people looked at a bunch of faces, and they had to say, like, did the group as a whole seem happier or sadder?
So it's getting at how we see emotion in other people. What do they find?
Well, people tended to pick sad more often, just a little bit, but consistently. It's a subtle bias, but the researchers could measure it really precisely. They even connected it to like objective rankings of individual faces and how sad or happy they looked.
So they basically made a data set that already had this sad bias baked in. Then what did they do with that?
They used it to train an AI, one of those models meant for analyzing images. And this is where it gets interesting. The AI didn't just learn the same level of bias, it actually amplified it. So it was even more likely to say the faces were sad, even more than the people it learned from.
Wait, how is that possible? Shouldn't it just copy the data it was trained on?
Well, it looks like the AI, in trying to be super accurate, it sort of exploited little bits of noise in the data, like picking up on tiny patterns and pushing them further than we would. Almost like it was, overthinking things and making the bias worse.
So it's not just inheriting the bias, it's making it stronger. And this is where that whole feedback loop idea comes in.
Exactly. It's like a three-step thing. First, you have humans looking at the faces, the AI is watching and learning. Then a new group comes in to do the same thing, but now they also see the AI's judgment.
I wonder what happens when people don't realize they're being influenced by AI.
Well, they found that over time, those new people actually started to agree more with the AI's sad bias. And, get this, it even happened when they thought they were just seeing another human's judgment, not a machine's.
Wow. So we think AI is helping us, but it might be pushing us in a biased direction without us knowing. This is making me think a lot. How do we even start to fix this bias problem when these systems are already so complicated?
Yeah, that's the big question, and that's why this research is so important. It's not just a theory, it's about the AI being used right now.
And it's not just faces, right? I mean, this bias can pop up in other places too. They did another experiment with, what was it called? Random dot kinematogram. Something about judging which way dots are moving.
Right. Imagine a screen full of dots, some moving randomly, others kind of drifting in one direction. You have to figure out which way they're going overall. So they had three different algorithms, one that was accurate, one that was made to be biased, and one that was just noisy. It made as many mistakes as the biased one, but without favoring any direction.
Okay, so three very different AIs to work with. What happened when people had to judge the dots along with these algorithms?
The results were really clear. When people worked with the biased algorithm, they got more biased themselves. But when they worked with the accurate one, their judgments actually got better, more accurate. And here's the catch. People underestimated how much that biased AI had messed with their thinking.
So what we're seeing is that AI doesn't just inherit bias, it can actually make it worse. And what's even crazier is it can make us, the humans using it, more biased too. This is starting to feel a lot more real than I thought it would. It's kind of freaky, right? Like there's this hidden influence we're not even aware of. But is that how humans normally learn from each other, though?
That's a good point. The researchers actually checked that too. Remember how the AI in the face experiment, made that sad bias even worse, even more than the original humans? Well, they had humans train on judgments from other humans, and they didn't see that same amplifying effect.
Huh. That's really interesting. It's like there's a difference between learning from other people and learning from AI.
Right, like AI just punches numbers, it finds patterns, even if they're just noise, or, show our biases, it doesn't get social cues, or all the little things humans do.
But even when we do get influenced by others, we're thinking about way more stuff, right? It's not just cold data, it's emotion, it's experiences, all that.
It's like comparing a calculator to the human brain, The calculator gives you the right answer, but it doesn't understand what the numbers mean. But our brains, they make sense of the world in a much bigger way.
So does that mean AI is inherently more biased than people are?
I wouldn't say more biased, but the type of bias is different. For us, biases are often, we don't even realize we have them. It's from how we grew up, our culture, all that. But with AI, the bias is baked right into the data itself. And because AI is so focused on patterns, it just amplifies those biases without thinking if it's right or wrong ethically,
Okay, this is where it gets really real for me. Let's talk real world stuff. You mentioned things like hiring and healthcare earlier. How does this bias mess things up in those areas?
Okay, let's take a look at a real-world AI you might have heard of, Stable Diffusion. It's that AI that makes pictures from text descriptions. It's gone pretty popular, but some studies have shown it actually reinforces biases we already have, especially in pictures of like professionals. For instance, if you tell it to make a picture of a financial manager, it almost always shows a white guy.
Whoa, so even something like making pictures, AI can show and even make our bad stereotypes worse. Is there any way to like measure how much this affects what people think?
There's research on that too. They showed people pics of different folks, like different races and genders, then asked them to pick who was most likely to be a financial manager, you know?
I'm guessing seeing all those AI pictures with mostly white men changed who people picked, right?
You got it. After seeing those AI images, people were more likely to pick a white guy for that job.
That's kind of disturbing, but it makes sense with what we've been talking about. It's like this bias sneaking in when we're just even realizing it.
Exactly. And it shows how important it is to remember these AI systems are being used to make real decisions. Like right now, it's not just a theoretical problem anymore. It can actually affect people's lives.
Makes you think, it sounds like we need to do a bunch of things to fix this. Like we need to make AI less biased, but also learn how to be more critical of the info it gives us?
Absolutely. We got to recognize that AI is powerful, but it needs to be used the right way. That means fixing bias everywhere, from how we collect data to how we design the algorithms, and even teaching people about it.
But even if we do all that perfectly, there's still the problem of our OWN biases, right? The research showed that people didn't even realize how much the biased AI was affecting them, even when it clearly was. How do we fix that?
That's the tough one, for sure. It gets at the heart of how we think and decide things. Maybe part of it is learning to spot our own biases. You know, how we jump to conclusions or rely on stereotypes or get swayed by stuff that doesn't even matter. AI can use those tricks against us.
So it's not just about spotting bias in the AI, it's spotting it in ourselves too.
Yeah, exactly. It's about understanding that we all do these things, like jumping to conclusions or use stereotypes without even knowing it. And AI, unfortunately, it knows how to use that against us.
So basically, we got to know ourselves better to avoid being tricked by AI. It's like a whole new level of self-awareness.
I like that. It's like a self-discovery journey in this whole digital age. The more we know about ourselves and about AI's limits, the better we'll be at using it the right way.
You know, at the start of this deep dive, I was kind of nervous, a bit scared even, but now I feel more like we could actually do something about this, you know?
Me too. It's not about rejecting AI or being afraid of it. It's about understanding its weaknesses and using it carefully to make ourselves better.
So next time you see a cool AI image or get a suggestion from an algorithm, think about it for a sec. Where's this info coming from? What biases might be hidden there? And how's it changing what you think? The answers might really surprise you. Okay, so we've talked about a lot, like biased algorithms and how our brains work and all that. Honestly, it's kind of unsettling, this idea that AI can make our biases worse. So, what do we do about it? Where do we even go from here?
Yeah, it can be a bit unsettling, but the more we know about it, the better we can handle it, right? Maybe we should try to sum up the main points for our listeners.
Good idea. What's the most important thing people should take away from this deep dive?
I think the biggest thing is AI bias. It's not just that the AI is wrong, it's that it can make us as humans make worse decisions.
And it's not some far-off problem either. It's happening right now with systems people use every day.
Exactly. From those AI-generated pictures online to those algorithms used for hiring or loans, these little biases can really mess things up in the real world.
We also saw how this feedback loop, between human and AI bias, it's different from how humans normally influence each other.
Yeah, AI uses statistics and can spot those tiny patterns in data. It's super powerful, but that also means it can be misused really easily.
And maybe the scariest part is we often don't even realize how much these algorithms are affecting us.
Totally. We might think we're being objective, making our own choices, but these sneaky influences, they can slide right under our radar.
So if we're not even aware of it most of the time, how can we be more aware?
It starts with knowing that any AI, no matter how fancy it is only as good as the data it learns from and the people who made it.
So we should be asking questions like, where'd this data come from? Who made this thing? What biases might be hidden in there?
Exactly. And even beyond that, we need to understand our own biases better. How do we tend to make decisions? What shortcuts does our brain take? What assumptions do we make without even thinking about it?
It's like, to understand how AI might be tricking us, we got to understand our own minds better first.
I like how you put that. It's a whole self-discovery thing in this digital age. The more we know about ourselves and the limits of AI, the better we can use it in a good way, right?
Yeah, when we started this deep dive, I was a bit nervous, maybe even a little scared. But now I feel like we can actually do something about this. We're not just helpless.
Yeah, for sure. It's not about saying no to AI or being scared of it. It's about understand of its weaknesses and using it in a smart way to, improve ourselves and the world around us.
So, to wrap things up, remember, the next time you see something cool that AI made, or you get a suggestion from an algorithm, just pause for a sec. Think about it. Where's this info coming from? What biases could be hiding there? And how is it changing your thinking? The answers might surprise you. And that's it for our deep dive today. Thanks for listening.